I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but what happened that day changed my life forever. One minute I was standing in my mother-in-law's living room, protecting my baby's future, and the next, I was doubled over in pain as my sister-in-law's kick sent shockwaves through my pregnant belly. The moment I felt that warm rush of fluid, my heart stopped. My water had broken, 2 months too early. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah and I'm 28 years old. Before this nightmare began, I was just enjoying life as an expectant mom, 8 months pregnant with my first baby. My husband Mike and I were so excited about becoming parents. We'd spent months preparing everything. The nursery was painted in soft yellows and greens, tiny clothes were folded neatly in drawers, and we'd even picked out the perfect crib. Living in Houston wasn't always easy with the cost of living, but Mike and I had been smart with our money. We both worked hard at our jobs, me as a teacher and Mike in IT, and managed to save $20,000 specifically for our baby's medical expenses. It wasn't easy, but we cut back on eating out, skipped vacations, and put away every extra dollar we could. This money was our safety net, our way of making sure our baby would have everything they needed, especially if any complications came up. Mike is the kindest person I know, and when we got married 3 years ago, his mom Linda welcomed me like a daughter. She's this warm, caring woman who always smells like fresh-baked cookies and gives the best hugs. Since Mike's dad passed away 5 years ago, Linda's been the glue holding the family together. She was over the moon when we told her about the pregnancy, already planning all the ways she'd spoil her first grandchild. But then there's Mike's sister, Rachel. She's complicated. For the past 4 years, she and her husband Tom have been trying to have a baby. I understand how painful that struggle must be. Really, I do. But instead of dealing with her pain, Rachel turned it into anger, especially toward me. Every time I saw her, there'd be these little comments, these sharp little digs about how some people get everything handed to them, or how must be nice to get pregnant so easily. I tried to be understanding. I kept my distance when I could, always made sure to avoid talking about the pregnancy around her, and did my best to be sensitive to her feelings. Mike would often arrange our visits to his mom's house when he knew Rachel wouldn't be there. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. At least it did, until that day. It started like any normal Sunday. Mike and I went to Linda's house for our weekly family dinner. We thought Rachel and Tom would be out of town that weekend. That's what Linda had told us. But when we walked in, there was Rachel, sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. The moment she looked up and saw my pregnant belly, her face twisted into that familiar scowl. "Oh," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "Didn't know you'd be here. Still parading that bump around, I see." Mike squeezed my hand, and I could feel him tense up beside me. But before he could say anything, Linda called from the kitchen, "Rachel, honey, be nice. Come help me with the salad." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. I sat down carefully on the armchair, trying to make myself as small as possible. Not an easy task at 8 months pregnant. Mike went to help his mom in the kitchen, leaving me alone with Rachel. Rachel put her phone down and stared at me with this look that made my skin crawl. "So," she said, leaning forward, "I heard you and Mike have been saving up quite a bit of money for the baby." My heart started beating faster. I didn't like where this was going. "Yes," I said carefully. "We've been putting money aside for medical expenses. $20,000, she said, like she was tasting the words. "That's a lot of money just sitting there. Money you might not even need." I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, rubbing my belly as the baby kicked, almost like they could sense the tension. "We want to be prepared," I explained. "You never know what might happen." Rachel stood up suddenly, pacing the room. "You know what I could do with $20,000? Her voice got louder. "Do you have any idea how many fertility treatments that could cover? How many chances at having a baby that could give me?" "Rachel," I started, trying to keep my voice calm. "I understand you're hurting, but—" "No!" she snapped, spinning around to face me. "You don't understand anything. You got pregnant so easily, and here you are, sitting on money that could change my life." I heard movement in the kitchen, and Linda appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her face fell as she took in the scene. "What's going on out here?" "Mom," Rachel said, her voice trembling. Tell them they should help the family. That money could give me a chance at having a baby instead of just sitting in their bank account." Linda's face went pale. "Rachel, honey, that's their money. They saved it for their baby. Of course you'd take her side, Rachel screamed, her face getting red. You always do. Ever since she married Mike, it's been Sarah this, Sarah that. Perfect Sarah with her perfect pregnancy. I tried to stand up, thinking maybe I should leave, but Rachel stepped closer to me. The look in her eyes scared me. There was something wild there, something desperate. Please, I said softly. I know this is hard for you, but that money is for our baby's medical care. We can't. I never got to finish that sentence. Rachel's face contorted with rage, and before anyone could react, she lunged forward. Her foot connected with my stomach in one sharp, violent kick. The pain was instant and overwhelming. Time seemed to stop. I heard Linda screaming. I heard Mike's running footsteps from the kitchen. But all I could focus on was the warm rush of fluid running down my legs and the terrible, cramping pain in my belly. My water, I gasped, clutching my stomach. The baby, something's wrong. Mike was suddenly there, his arms around me, lowering me to the couch. His face was white with fear and fury. Call an ambulance, he shouted. Now! Rachel stood frozen, her hands over her mouth, finally seeming to realize what she'd done. I didn't mean to. Get out, Linda screamed at her daughter, already on the phone with 911. Get out of my house. The pain was getting worse, coming in waves now. I could barely breathe. Mike held me close, whispering that everything would be okay, but I could hear the fear in his voice. The baby, I kept saying. Please save our baby. The last thing I remember before everything went dark was the sound of sirens in the distance and Mike's voice, breaking as he begged me to hold on. I woke up to the steady beeping of hospital machines and the smell of disinfectant. Everything felt foggy, and for a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all came rushing back. Rachel, the kick, my water breaking. My hands flew to my stomach, and panic set in when I felt how much smaller it was. My baby! I cried out, trying to sit up. Where's my baby? A nurse rushed in, gently pushing me back against the pillows. Take it easy, Mrs. Wilson. Your little girl is in the NICU. She's early, but she's fighting hard. Girl, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. We have a daughter? Mike appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted but relieved to see me awake. He rushed to my side, taking my hand in his. Sarah, thank God, he said, his voice cracking. You've been out for almost 12 hours. They had to do an emergency C-section. Is she okay? I asked, squeezing his hand. Our daughter? Mike managed a small smile. She's tiny, just 4 pounds, but the doctors say she's strong. They're watching her closely in the NICU. He paused, his expression darkening. The police want to talk to you when you're ready. Mom's security cameras caught everything. Rachel's been arrested. I closed my eyes, remembering the horrible moment. I can't believe she did this to us. Just then, a doctor came in. She checked my vitals and explained everything that had happened. The kick had caused the placenta to separate from my uterus, something called placental abruption. They had to deliver the baby immediately to save both our lives. When can I see her? I asked. We'll take you to the NICU in a wheelchair once you're a bit stronger. The doctor said kindly, your daughter needs you, but you need to take care of yourself too. 2 days later, I finally got to see my baby girl. Nothing could have prepared me for how tiny she looked in that incubator, covered in tubes and wires. But when I put my hand through the opening and her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, I knew we'd both keep fighting. We named her Emma. It means fighter, and that's exactly what she was. A week into our hospital stay, Rachel and her husband showed up unannounced. Mike was getting coffee when they walked in, and I felt my heart start racing. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice shaking. Rachel looked different, smaller somehow. I came to apologize, she said, not quite meeting my eyes, and to offer you money, $5,000 for the medical bills. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 5,000? Rachel, do you have any idea what you've done? Our daughter is fighting for her life in the NICU because of you. Her husband stepped forward. Look, we're trying to make this right. Let's handle this privately, without getting lawyers involved. That's when Mike came back. The coffee cup hit the floor when he saw them. Get out, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Get out before I call security. You're overreacting, Rachel started to say, but Mike cut her off. Overreacting? You attacked my pregnant wife. Our daughter was born 2 months early because of you. This isn't something you can fix with money and a half-hearted apology. The next few weeks were a blur of NICU visits, police statements, and lawyer meetings. The security footage from Linda's house showed everything. Rachel demanding money, her angry outburst, and that terrible kick. There was no way she could claim it was an accident. When we pressed charges, Rachel's true colors showed. She tried to play the victim, telling anyone who would listen that I had provoked her, that her infertility struggles had pushed her to the breaking point. But the video didn't lie. "Your Honor," her lawyer said in court, "my client was experiencing severe emotional distress due to her inability to conceive. She deeply regrets her actions." But the prosecutor wasn't having it. She played the security footage and the whole courtroom went silent. Watching it again made my stomach turn. Seeing myself, 8 months pregnant, trying to protect my baby from someone who was supposed to be family. This wasn't a moment of weakness, the prosecutor said. This was a deliberate attack on a heavily pregnant woman after attempting to extort money from her. Rachel's face got redder and redder as the evidence piled up. Then she did something that sealed her fate. She stood up in the middle of the court and started screaming. "She doesn't deserve that baby. She doesn't deserve any of it." The judge had heard enough. Rachel was found guilty of assault and reckless endangerment. She got 1 year of probation, mandatory anger management classes, and had to pay $50,000 in damages, way more than the $20,000 she'd tried to take from us. But money couldn't fix everything. Our tiny Emma spent 2 months in the NICU. Every day, Mike and I would sit beside her incubator, reading stories, singing songs, and praying she'd grow stronger. The nurses called her Mighty Mouse because even though she was so small, she never gave up. Linda visited every day too, bringing homemade meals and crying every time Emma wrapped her tiny hand around her finger. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying. "I never thought Rachel could do something like this." "It's not your fault, Mom," Mike would tell her. But we all knew our family would never be the same. Finally, after what felt like forever, Emma was strong enough to come home. But we knew we couldn't stay in Houston. There were too many painful memories, and Rachel still lived too close for comfort. "What about that job offer in Denver?" Mike asked one night as we watched Emma sleeping in her crib. Clean slate, fresh start. I looked at our daughter, so tiny but so strong, and knew what we had to do. Within a month, we'd packed up our life and moved to Colorado. Linda cried when we left, but she understood. She promised to visit often and FaceTime every day to watch Emma grow. The morning we drove away from Houston, I felt like I could finally breathe again. Emma was strapped safely in her car seat, getting stronger every day. Mike reached over and squeezed my hand as we passed the "Now Leaving Houston" sign. "We made it," he said softly. Looking back at Emma in the rearview mirror, I smiled. Yes, we did. That was 6 months ago. Today, Emma is thriving. You'd never know she was a preemie by looking at her. She's got her daddy's blue eyes, my curly hair, and the strongest grip you've ever felt from a baby. Every milestone she reaches feels like a miracle, considering how her journey began. We've settled into our new life in Denver pretty well. Mike's job is great, and I've started working part-time from home so I can be with Emma. Our new house is smaller than our old one, but it feels safer and more peaceful. The mountains outside our window remind me every day that we made the right choice to start fresh. Linda visits every other month, and she's flying in next week for Emma's first birthday. She sends us pictures of the quilts she's making for her granddaughter and FaceTimes us almost every evening to sing Emma goodnight songs. The love she shows makes up for the family we left behind. As for Rachel, well, last we heard, she moved to Arizona. She still hasn't paid all the damages the court ordered. But honestly, that doesn't matter much to us anymore. Some of our relatives tried to pressure us into making peace with her, saying family should stick together. But Mike and I learned the hard way that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is create boundaries. Even with family, the money we saved, we ended up needing every penny of it and more for Emma's NICU stay. But you know what? We'd spend 10 times that amount to have our healthy, happy little girl. These days, when I rock Emma to sleep, I think about how close we came to losing everything, and how fighting for what's right, even when it's hard, is the best lesson I can teach my daughter. Sometimes I wonder if sharing this story will help someone else stand up for themselves or their child. Maybe there's another mom-to-be out there dealing with toxic family members, afraid to set boundaries. If that's you, please know that you have every right to protect yourself and your baby. No amount of family pressure or guilt is worth risking your child's safety. Emma just woke up from her nap. I can hear her babbling through the baby monitor. Every time I hear her voice, it reminds me that happiness can come after hardship, that new beginnings are possible, and that sometimes the family you choose to keep in your life is more important than the family you're born into. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you for listening. It wasn't easy to share, but it feels good to finally tell it. If you found this helpful or touching, please hit the like button. It helps more people find and learn from these real stories. Drop a comment below if you've ever had to make tough choices to protect your family. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means everything, and this community we're building together helps people feel less alone in their struggles. And remember, sometimes the hardest chapters of our lives lead to the most beautiful stories. Emma is living proof of that. Thank you all, and I'll see you in the next video.